Welcome to System 2.
Have you ever noticed how some problems are, well, pretty simple to deal with, while others feel like this impossible tangled knot you can't ever undo? We live in a world that's just full of challenges, right? From the super simple to the truly systemic, and honestly, understanding the difference between them is probably one of the most important skills we can have right now.
I mean, think about it. You get a flat tire, you know what to do. There are steps. It's a clear problem, it has a clear solution. But then you look at something massive, like global poverty, and that rulebook just goes right out the window. There's no single cause, there's no easy fix, and pretty much everyone disagrees on how to even start. So what is the deal? What really separates these two kinds of problems?
Okay, so to make sense of this, a couple of thinkers, Horst Riddle and Melville Weber, gave us this fantastic framework. It's the difference between what they called tame and wicked problems. On the one hand, you've got tame problems. Think of them like puzzles. Yeah, they might be really hard, but they have an endpoint, a technical fix. But wicked problems, they're a completely different beast. They are messy, they never really end, and they're all tangled up in our different values. There's no single right answer. And getting this distinction, that's the key to everything else we're going to talk about.
So let's start with the basics, the simplest type of problem out there. Sociologist Michael Carolyn calls this a first-order problem. And these are the challenges that are, literally right in front of our faces.
Carolyn uses a perfect, simple example, a piece of litter. Just picture a single soda can tossed on the side of the road. It's a problem we can get our heads around immediately.
So let's break down why litter is so simple. First off, it's got low complexity. It's a can, that's it. It also has a low epistemological distance. Now, that sounds super academic, but all it means is that we're close to it. We don't need any special tools, we can see it, we can touch it, we understand what it is just by looking. The boundaries are clear, and the solution, it's obvious. You pick it up.
Okay, but what happens when the problem is something you can't see? This is where we level up in complexity. Let's dive into the second-order problem.
For this one, Carolyn's example is dioxin, a highly toxic chemical. The thing about dioxin is it's invisible, it's odorless, it's tasteless. It's a problem that exists completely outside our senses. To even know that it's there, we need labs, we need scientists, we need all sorts of special gear. We're already one big step removed from the problem itself.
And this is where things start to get really interesting. The physicist Werner Heisenberg said something profound. He said that our tools don't just show us reality, they actually help shape what we see. Our method of questioning, the tests we run, the instruments we use, it determines the answers we find. We're not just passive observers anymore.
And this leads us to a really crucial idea called enactment. The whole concept is that our scientific practices don't just describe a reality that's already out there, they actually help to perform it. So for example, when a scientist runs a test for pH levels, they are enacting a very specific version of what water quality is. When a satellite measures ice thickness, it's enacting a data-driven version of the Arctic. Each tool, each method, brings a different but equally real version of the thing into existence.
So, what happens when a problem is so huge, so complex, that even our best instruments can't see the whole thing at once? Well, this brings us to the highest level of complexity, the third-order problem.
Global warming is the perfect example here. As Carolyn puts it, we indirectly see it indirectly. Think about that. You don't see global warming. What you see are bits and pieces of data. You see readings from ice cores, satellite data on ocean temperatures, complex computer models. And each of those things is an indirect measurement that has to be translated and then translated again into this one massive idea we call climate change.
Now, to really get a handle on these massive third-order problems, we need a few new terms in our toolkit. Let's circle back to that idea of a wicked problem. As you can see, these are the challenges that are just fundamentally resistant to solutions. Why? Because they're caught in this web of incomplete information, tons of different groups with conflicting values, and everything is connected to everything else.
All right, next up is a wild concept from the philosopher Timothy Morton, the hyperobject. A hyperobject is something so massively spread out across time and space that it's almost impossible for our brains to fully grasp it. Think about all the plastic that has ever been created on Earth, or all the nuclear radiation. You can only ever see tiny little pieces or effects of a hyperobject, never the whole thing at once.
And finally, there's this idea of a multiple object. Now, this one can be a little tricky, but here's the key takeaway. Climate change isn't just one single thing that a scientist and a farmer have different opinions about. No, Through their different practices, they are actually enacting different realities of climate change. For the scientist, it's a reality made of data and models. For the farmer, it's a reality made of changing rainfall and crop yields. As it says here, it's more than one but less than many, because these different realities are, of course, still connected.
Okay, so we have these vast, wicked, multiple hyperobjects all around us. But here's the thing about the 21st century. They aren't just staying in their own little boxes anymore. So what happens when they all start crashing into each other?
Well, this is what experts are now calling the polycrisis. And it's not just a perfect storm of bad things happening at the same time. It's a situation where these massive global crises are actually entangled with each other, feeding into one another, in a way that makes the total damage way, way bigger than just adding up the individual problems.
So how does this entanglement actually work? Well, one way is a simple domino effect, a straight line of cause and effect. We all just lived through a perfect example of this, right? A pandemic crisis hits that directly causes a huge supply chain disruption. And that, in turn, helps trigger a global inflation crisis. See? One crisis just knocks over the next and the next in a direct line.
But the much more dangerous mechanism is the feedback loop. This is where crises start reinforcing each other in a vicious cycle. So, for instance, widespread economic turmoil fuels rising nationalism. That nationalism makes global cooperation weaker. A lack of cooperation makes it basically impossible to deal with climate change, and worsening climate disasters create, you guessed it, even more economic turmoil. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, locking the whole system into a dangerous downward spiral.
So, faced with this world of wicked problems and hyperobjects and this deepening polycrisis, what on earth are we supposed to do? The answer isn't some new gadget or a simple 5-point plan. It's a fundamentally new way of thinking.
If you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. You cannot solve a wicked problem. You can't solve a polycrisis the same way you solve a flat tire. The goal isn't to find some perfect final answer. The goal is to navigate the complexity, day by day, to manage the risks, and to adapt as the whole situation keeps changing.
This slide really sums up the mental shift that we all need to make. The old mindset, the one we built for a world of simpler, tame problems, was all about solving, controlling, and finding certainty. But the new mindset, the one that our complex world demands, is about navigating, managing, and most important of all, humility. It's about having the humility to accept that our knowledge is never going to be complete, and that we have to stay open to learning and adapting, always.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. If our reality isn't a collection of separate puzzles just waiting to be solved, but instead it's this deeply interconnected web of wicked problems, what kind of citizens, what kind of leaders, and what kind of thinking does this new reality truly ask from every single one of us?